Hello and welcome to this AutoCAD tutorial video for AutoCAD 2017. In this video we're going to be looking at layouts and producing drawings from our sketches that we've made in model space. So to start this video off, what I've done here is I've created a simple orthographic drawing in third angle projection, and what we're going to do is look at getting this from model space actually onto a drawing that we could print out or send as a PDF attached to an email or something like that. So let's get started. So here's our drawing that we've created. Now what we're going to do now is if we go down here, we've got these layout tabs at the bottom, and these are automatically created when you make a new drawing. So here's our layout tab. So this brings up our first layout drawing here. Now what you can see is that AutoCAD automatically puts in what's called a viewport. Now what's happening here is that this is an object or a shape. It's a rectangle by default when it's created like this, but you can create randomly shaped objects and circular objects and other such things. But this is the default viewport that's created. And what this is like, it's like, imagine that this is your paper of your drawing that you'll be able to print out eventually. And what this is like a window that's cut into the paper that allows you to see through the paper and into model space. Okay, so what we're seeing is through this window into model space. And if we go back into model space, and we'll just do something random, we'll just put a circle in there or something. If we go back to the layout, you can see that it's appeared in that viewport. I'm just going to go back and delete that because we don't really want that on our lovely drawing there. So what we need to think about now is, this is great because we've got an image onto our paper. We could print this out and we'd have a drawing, but it doesn't really meet all the criteria for a professional drawing in a number of ways. So let's first of all have a look at what we can do to make this a little bit more presentable. The first thing we'd really want to do if we're going to create a drawing that we want to print out or send to someone in an email is to create a border around the edge of the drawing. Now this can be a little bit tricky because what won't happen in AutoCAD is you can't click to the corners. So we can snap to objects, we can snap to this frame, but what we can't do is snap to the corners of the paper. So what we're going to do is if we go to first of all output. Now what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to create a PDF from a drawing, because there's so many different printers around the world that it would be impossible to show something that would work for everyone. So if we look at how to create a PDF, then that's going to be the most helpful, because then you can print that out in whatever PDF format and whatever printer that you have. So let's open up the page setup manager. So we're in the output tab, page setup manager. If we click that, you can see here we've got our two layouts, layout 1 and layout 2. You can create new layouts here. You can create new layouts by clicking on this little plus sign here. And again, this is starting to see the power of using CAD for drawings, is that you could have a very, very complex drawing and you could have many layouts that relate to different parts of it, considering different components, arranged in different ways and showing different details. So this is quite useful, but we'll just stick with this layout for now, and what we're going to do is we're going to modify it. Now this brings up the page setup window here. Now this window here is very similar to the print style that we'll be seeing a little bit later. So we're going to set this page up, and if you scroll down this list you should be able to find any printers that you've got connected to your computer, as long as they're all set up and ready to go. You can see here, here's my my printer set up here. But what we're going to do is come down to this option, DWG to PDF. We're going to select that, and that gives us our option that's going to convert our drawing into a PDF that can then be very simply sent to someone, and they can view it with any free PDF viewer that they may have. So what we're looking at here, if we look at our options, you can see here, if we look at this, that shaded area indicates where the printing will take place. So if we click OK there and go back to this layout, if you look at this dotted line here represents the printing area. So if we were to create a drawing and anything went outside that area, it would not show on the PDF or the print job once we'd completed it. So we need to make sure that we stay within those dotted lines. Now this can be quite useful. We can use this to our own advantage actually in creating the frame, creating the border for this drawing. If we go back into Page Setup Manager, back into Layout 1 and Modify, if we come down here to paper size, you can see we've got it set to the international standard for A4, 210 by 297 mil. But if we come down now, and instead of using the ISO A4 as it is, if we go up here, we can go to ISO full bleed A4, 210 by 297. And what that does is it takes basically the print area to the entire piece of paper. So that means that when we export this as a PDF, it will print the entire thing that we show. So if we leave this on layout, there are different options of things that you can actually print. A window can be quite useful if you're needing to just very quickly print a small detail from model space, but we're just going to stick with the layout here at the moment. So we've got all this information here, plot object line weights, yes we want to do that. Some of this will be changed when we come to actually do the plot, but for the time being this is absolutely acceptable. We're going to keep this in landscape format as well rather than portrait, so you can see there that that is changing. So the rotation of the letters changing there from portrait like that to landscape like that. We want ours to be on line landscape. Good, so we'll click OK there. Obviously there's other functions in here, but we won't discuss all of these, that'll be in a later video. So we'll click OK on that one. And then we're going to use this. So if we close this, now if you look here, all around the edge, that's where our dotted line now appears, all the way around the edge. So I'm going to show you a little trick here, and this is how to create a really nice even border all around the inside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a temporary viewport. Okay, before we get into placing viewports specifically, I'm going to just create a viewport temporarily. So if you type in mview into the control bar and hit space for enter, you see here we've got these options now. Specify the corner of the viewport. We've got fit, shade, plot, lock, all this information. If you click fit or type F, what it does is it places a viewport that's automatically showing the extents of our objects that we've produced, and it's snapped it to the printed area. So what we can do now is if we just take our line tool, so home, line, what we can do is we can snap to the edges of the viewport that we've created. Now this is going onto the object layer, okay, so we'll probably change this in a moment. And as you can see, if I just snap to the corners of this drawing, corners of this like that, and click there, and that has put a reference point all around the edge of this, which is quite useful. So then all we've got to do is get rid of that original viewport layer that we created, that temporary viewport. So if we just select these, because you'll struggle to select this now that it's behind here, because you need to select the edge of the viewport in order to select it to move it or extend it. So what we'll do is just select all of these lines like so, select all of those, and then what we'll do is right click, and here where it says draw order, if we send all of those to the back, then it will put it behind that viewport, and we should be able to select the viewport itself, which we have, and delete it, and you can see there that we've got a nice even frame all around the edge. Now obviously when this ends up being printed, there's probably not a printer in the world that will print right to the edge of paper like that and that accurately. So what we're going to do is we're now just going to offset from that using the offset tool, and we're going to offset 15 mil from the edge of our lines here. So there's one. This would have been a lot quicker if I'd done this as a polyline, but that's fine. And there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. And then for the sake of completeness, I'm going to delete these. I'm going to get rid of the external ones so that they don't cause us any problems down the line when it comes to printing, even when we're printing it from a PDF. And then just trim up these edges. Again, if any of these commands that I'm using are unfamiliar to you, then please do look at my other videos for information on these, the offset tool, the trimming tool, and all that sort of information. So that's quite good there. So that's 15 mil. Okay, that's good. So we've got a nice neat border that we can work within now. Now what I'm going to do is just go to my object layer, and this is quite a good exercise actually, because it's showing you that I can, all the normal tools that you can use in model space apply just as equally to paper space. The difference is that this only appears in paper space. If I go to model space, there's no sign of that border anywhere. It's only on that layout. Okay, so if I draw something in model space, it can appear here. If I draw something in paper space, it won't appear in model space. It'll only appear on that individual layout that we've created. Okay, so let's have a look at this now. So if I create a new layer, and I call that layer frame, maybe, something like that, call it frame, and I'm going to set this to 0.25 mil, and that's fine. Close that down, and then I'm going to send this frame, I'm going to send this onto that layer, so we'll put that onto our frame layer, and that's looking a little bit neater already, isn't it? That's great. So I'm going to move this around a little bit. Again, the usual tools apply, the modify tools. If I press M and enter, then I can move this around however I want. Still got my ortho snap-ons, turn that off. So I can move that wherever I want to. And what I'm going to do also now is I'm going to start looking at shrinking this down. Now when you start to shrink this, what happens is that the objects won't shrink with it. What we're doing is we're making the window that we're looking through smaller. Now obviously there is a way to bring these back into range, but we'll look at that momentarily. Now what we're going to do now is create just a little title block down in the corner here, and again this is a very simple method that we're looking at here. So obviously there's other methods that we'll be using where you can create title blocks that are actually literally what's called a block in CAD, where you can modify it and insert it into other drawings. So once you've created it once, that's it for all time really. You can put it into as many drawings as you want, but again this is just illustrating the basics at the moment. So we're going to offset by 10 mil this line, and then offset from there again another one, and then I'm going to put a line right up through the middle of that. Okay, and I'm back on my object layer, which is no good. So let's go to our frame layer and draw a line there, and then trim this up. Now obviously again this is very simple. The chance of you finding a title block that is this simple is pretty slim, but this illustrates the basics. Okay, so we've got some information there, we've got some boxes there that we can populate with information. We can put text in there. So I'm going to start off my text here, and I'm going to make it just a random size because you can adjust that afterwards. So insert text box, and this is going to say name. So that's whoever drew it basically. Again, your company or organisation will have lots of different standards that they'll use for this, and if we say we want this to be, say, 5 mil high, the text, I might need to just make my box a little bit bigger so it appears. Okay, don't know why that's disappeared. Let's try that again. 5. So if we set our text height to 5 and just type in name there, that's our text sorted out. And then because that looks a little bit odd set up in that corner there, if we just move it down by 2.5, just going to put my ortho snap on to make sure this goes nice and neatly in the right direction, 2.5, and there we go, and down by 2.5 as well, 2.5, and what that's going to do, the reason I've gone 2.5 is that the box was 10 mil high. I've set my text height to 5 mil, which means that leaves an equal gap of 2.5 mil on either side, which is quite nice. That's going to look nice and neat. And then just type in name of the drawer, the author of the drawing, Joe Robinson, and then we can just do very similar down here. In fact, what I'll do is I'll copy that text box, so I can copy that, use that as my reference point and bring it down to there. So by using that as my reference point, it lines it up just beautifully there, and then just here as well, although I've still got my ortho snap on, so that will come off, and we'll pop it there like that. Edit the text in here. I want this to be the date, and we'll put in date, and today's date is the 13th of the 12th, 2016. That's our date box sorted out, and then we probably want to put something in here about drawing number. So drawing number 1. And that's a very simple title block. Obviously in a proper drawing, a drawing that you'd be creating commercially, there'd be a lot more information in here, information on revisions as well, but this is the basic principle of inserting text into a title block. Again, as we say, there are other methods for creating title blocks where you can have drop-down menus for commonly selected items, types of drawing, information and drawing issues, but all of that will be shown on a future video. So coming back to our viewport here, you can see this is looking a little bit odd. So what we'll do is we'll start to change this up a little bit. Now what you can do with a viewport is you can extend it like this and move it around a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to change the scale on this. So if you double click on the, if you double click inside here, you'll notice that the edge of the frame goes dark, goes heavy, and what you can then do is you're kind of operating inside the model space. So what we're doing is we're moving our view of the model space around, and if you scroll your mouse wheel in and out, you can change the view of that. What's very useful to monitor is down here is what the scale that you're working at now. So at this point I'm now working at 0.642476 scale, which obviously is not a scale that you'd use commercially, but it just helps to illustrate the point of this tracks what the scale is. So that looks like quite a nice size, but what's even better is if you bring up this bar here, you can actually get a much better handle on what the scale is. So that is a scale of 1 to 1. So if we were to print this out, this would actually come out with the dimensions as close to the original as we could get. 1 to 2 would look something like that, and you can keep going all the way down. You can also make things larger, so 2 to 1. We'll see what that looks like in a moment. So there's a 2 to 1 scale, but we'll go with 1 to 2 for just now. So then what we do is create our text box, our viewport. We change that so that it matches more closely the size of the drawing. Now what you're going to find is that at the moment this viewport is on the object layer. So if we were to export this to a PDF, it would end up with a big thick black line all around it, just exactly the same weight as the actual object, which obviously you don't want to see that. That looks pretty bad. So if we go to our layer properties, what we'll do is create a viewport layer. And what we'll do is we'll set the line weight to 0. And the other thing we'll do is here where it says plot is we will select that. Now that will just make sure, you see how that's got a little symbol there, a blocking symbol. What that's going to do is it's going to make sure that while what we can see on the viewport will get printed, the actual viewport itself, the edges of it, will not get printed. So that's quite useful. So that is some basic information on viewports and layers. You can add text and text boxes and whatever you like to this. Another fairly useful function, if we draw a circle on here, say something like that, and we'll move that onto the viewport layer, and just double check that goes onto the viewport layer as well. And what we can now do is we can go to this new tab that appears in layout in Paperspace, and layout viewports here. We can change an object, so this circle is just a random circle, there's nothing in it, but we can actually change that circle to a viewport by selecting it. And so that viewport now, that circle has become a viewport. So if we double click inside here, we can select different objects, we can select a different view basically of that drawing that we produced. So what we can do is we can zoom right in and look at some detail. So we might want to look at that chamfer. It may be that on this drawing here we can't quite see the dimension for that very easily. whereas if we look here we can zoom right in on that chamfer and show some interesting detail about that. So that shows that detail there, and obviously this would have text and annotations and names on it. We're just looking at the principles for this here. Next, what we would do in order to get this into a PDF format, very simply, we would go up here to the plot button, select plot. This is about batch plotting, so just select continue to plot a single sheet. We've got our drawing to PDF option chosen. We've got our ISO full bleed A4 still selected. We don't want to change any of that, that's all fine. Yes, we want to plot object line weights, and all of this information can just stay the same here. So if we now click OK, what this will do is then produce lots of different, it'll take us to a place where we can save our file. So in this case we've got lots of options, so I'll just save this into my documents. It will always save it as the name of the file, and then it will add -layout1 on there. So generally speaking, you'll remove that when you want to save it as a PDF, because generally speaking the layouts will have their own names anyway. So we now save this as a PDF, it processes it, and then it will open our brand new drawing that we've created. And we could print that off from there, and that would appear just fine. Just a word of warning, if you go via this road, if you plot as a PDF, what you want to do, make sure that that button isn't selected when you print it as a PDF. If you select fit, it will throw everything off that you've created, because it will try and put in other bits and bobs. If you click it as actual size, it should keep that nice neat border around the edge there that we've created. Now you can see that the viewport boundaries have disappeared, it's just left us a nice neat clear drawing. You can see there's no grid in the background there, we've got rid of that, and you can see here that the circle surrounding this has also been made invisible, but we can see the detail that we zoomed in on. So again, there'd be more detail on here describing what's going on here, describing what this view is, but that is the basics of how to create layouts. So I hope that this has been useful for you. As always, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, then please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.